high school student is surprised to find himself targeted by two magical schools in the city for an unknown reason. We got straight to the heart of the action. Takamiya, a high school student, tells us about himself. He tells us about his classmate Kagiri, who rides the same bus with him every morning. Then he told us about Kagiri, a spoiled brat who was the daughter of the student council president and had her own chauffeur. Takamiya was close to Kagiri's seat in class, but there was very little interaction between the two of them. We also saw how Kagiri was the center of attention at the school, so much so that she would enlist the help of her idiot friends if someone teased her. These idiots would teach Kagiri's tormentors a lesson they would remember for the rest of their lives. One day, as Takamiya was carrying some garbage to the dumpster, amidst the garbage was a strange-looking toy rabbit, but even stranger were the sentences written on the rabbit. Suddenly, Takamiya felt a strong earthquake, and when he looked up, a huge building was about to fall right on top of him. It was so far from reality that Takamiya was sure he was dreaming, or it was just a nightmare that would soon go away. But before he could be sure, he was surprised by the appearance of Kagiri, who appeared larger than Takamiya was used to. She quickly reassures him that everything will be fine. A group of huge rabbits began to attack Takamiya, who was terrified, but Kagiri kept reassuring him and defending him. Takamiya keeps telling himself it's just a nightmare, but Kagiri assures him it's not a nightmare. When Takamiya asked her why she was interested in protecting him, she approached him and told him that he was her prince. Takamiya couldn't believe what he was hearing and tried to convince himself that it was just a dream. Suddenly, the rabbits approached Takamiya and tried to attack him again, but Kagiri lost her composure, turned into a flame of fire, and cast a spell that destroyed the rabbits. Takamiya woke up and found himself in Kagiri's room inside the school, so he reassured himself that it was all a dream, but Kagiri told him that everything he had seen was real and that he was her prince. As strange as it was, and even though Takamiya kept saying to himself, "How can an idiot like me be the prince of a beautiful girl like Kagiri?" he decided to believe it in the end and tried to act accordingly. Everyone in the school was very surprised because Kagiri's treatment of Takamiya was very strange. It was different from how she treated anyone else, as she began to pay attention to his food and appearance. When the girls at school got jealous and wanted to tease him, Kagiri stood up to them and told them that Takamiya was her prince. The day after these events, Takamiya saw a building inside the school, but it stopped him because he remembered that it was the same building that he saw falling on him yesterday. He kept asking himself how it was real, and yet the building was still intact. While Takamiya was in these fantasies, a girl he didn't recognize approached him. When Takamiya asked her name, she told him that her name was Quarish, and that she was a rabbit witch. Takamiya knew he was in trouble. Quarish is already preparing with her rabbits to attack him. Suddenly, Kagiri appeared and said to Quarish, "It's not that easy, you stupid idiot. You have to finish me off first in order to touch my prince." Quarish gave the go-ahead for her bunnies to pounce on Takamiya, who began to panic, but Kagiri defended him with all her might and blocked the blows of Quarish and her bunnies. Kagiri was injured, which made Takamiya sad, and he kept asking her what was going on, but she kept reassuring him, telling him that she was from the fire and that he shouldn't worry. Kagiri continued to face Quarish and asked Takamiya to close his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he was surprised that everything was over. The whole place was back to normal, and even Kagiri was back to normal as if nothing had happened. Takamiya was relieved because he thought it was the end of the situation, but even though he was happy that the situation was over and Kagiri was safe, he was still very confused because up to this point, he hadn't been able to make sense of everything that had happened. In the end, he decides to wait and stay with Kagiri until he knows what he wants. Takamiya is increasingly confused because he doesn't understand why he's being targeted. When he tries to ask Kagiri more than once, she refuses to answer him. She tells him that she'll let him know everything, but only in time. Takamiya decides to ask her again until he gets to the bottom of what's happening to him. One day, Takamiya was going to school, and when he went to enter the classroom, he was surprised to find Kagiri torturing 4 of the girls who had teased Takamiya before. The torture was so severe that Takamiya asked Kagiri to stop burning them, but she told him that those foolish girls deserved what they were getting. Takamiya didn't understand any of this, but he was impressed by Kagiri's interest in him. When one of the girls Kagiri was torturing asked him to let her release them, Takamiya was amazed. He was even more surprised when the girl spoke on the basis that Kagiri was Takamiya's lover and would therefore obey his orders. Takamiya got nervous and said, "Who told you, you idiot, that Kagiri is my girlfriend? We're just classmates." Kagiri kept tying these girls up, but she stopped burning them with fire. Takamiya started asking them and Kagiri why they were all following him around. One of the girls tells him that they don't want to hurt him, but they need his body. Takamiya is naturally intrigued and asks them for an explanation, at which point they tell him that he has a different ability that they want. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a loud noise, followed by a black ink-like liquid falling from the ceiling above their room. Another girl, who turned out to be one of Kagiri's enemies, landed on them and began threatening to kidnap Takamiya. And then she actually got close to him and grabbed him, which made Kagiri lose her temper, so she started attacking her, and she let out a huge amount of flame. so big that it hurt Takamiya himself. But we noticed something strange. When Takamiya was injured, Kagari herself caught fire instead, which confirmed that there was a hidden connection between the two of them. Takamiya woke up to find Kagari sitting in front of him and told him that she wished she hadn't gotten him involved in the first place. She starts talking about the witches of the tower, and we learn that these are the girls who tried to attack Takamiya earlier. Takamiya tells her to tell him everything and tells her that he's the one, and that she doesn't have to fight alone to defend him, but they have to work together to defeat the tower witches. On the other hand, the tower witches were preparing for the upcoming battles, and we saw one of them meeting with a young man named Kazani, and we learned that it's the first meeting in 130 years. When Kazani asked her why, she didn't tell him explicitly about Takamiya and Kagari, but told him that she had heard that one of his followers was engaged with the enemy and had come to offer help. Takamiya, meanwhile, was a bit nervous as he was preparing to meet Kagari, but only as a colleague. However, after they met, Kagari started talking about what happened with the tower witches and told him that she is a member of the Witch Business Bureau, and that the disagreement between her and the tower witches was due to the different goals of their respective organizations. She went on to explain that the Witch Bureau is responsible for controlling magic in cities to ensure the safety of the population. The witches of the tower were once members of the Witchcraft Bureau, but they had defected from the bureau and were using magic as they saw fit without regard for anyone's safety. Takamiya understood that he was on a mission to defend the city and its inhabitants from the evil deeds of the tower witches. Takamiya then arrived with Kagari at the place where he had decided to have some drinks. Suddenly, a beautiful girl appeared in front of Takamiya, who was mesmerized by her beauty. But suddenly she approached him and said in a whisper, "I've finally reached the goal of the day. Stand still, you idiot." Before Takamiya realizes what's going on, the girl starts attacking him. But Kagari appeared and started using her fire to stop the attack. Kagari was able to take control of the situation. She told the girl to go back to wherever you came from and tell your leaders that no one will be able to hurt anyone from the Witch Business Bureau. After this situation ended, Kagari learned that she was immediately summoned in front of the leader of the Bureau of Witchcraft. When she got there, she found the leader very angry. She started berating her and said, "You reckless girl, I've told you many times to control your impulses." We noticed that the reason for the blame was that Kagari had caused a lot of destruction in the place where the battle between her and the girl from the Tower Witches took place. After the leader finished talking to Kagari, she addressed Takamiya and welcomed him. Takamiya was surprised and asked himself if the commander was welcoming him normally or if it was a sign that he was joining the place. After Kagari left the place with Takamiya, she met a group of Tower Witches who asked her to stop. They said, "We're going to defeat you and then we'll take Takamiya, you idiot." Takamiya was nervous, but Kagari calmed him down and told him to stand back and watch everything she did during the battle. A few seconds later, Kagari defeated the Tower Witches and took Takamiya to school. On the way, she asks him if he noticed every detail of the battle, and Takamiya tells her that he did. After they got to school, Kagari gave Takamiya a lot of books. Only then did Takamiya realize that he was now officially part of the Witch Business Bureau. Soon the teacher told them that they were all going to go to the tennis court. There, Takamiya learned that he would be on the same team as Kagari. During the match, Takamiya soon felt tired, but Kagari was cheering him on. By the end of the day, Takamiya was so tired and felt that he would be the most unsuccessful student of the Witch Business Office. But Kagari calmed him down and told him that everything is hard in the beginning, which encouraged Takamiya. They boarded the bus afterward, but shortly afterward, a tower witch named Kronwa appeared on the bus. She immediately started attacking Kagari, and strangely enough, she managed to use a spell that completely immobilized Kagari. Takamiya decides to defend Kagari, so he stands in front of the tower witch and tells her to stop what she's doing. But the tower witch said, "You idiot, you're on the weaker team. You should join us." Suddenly, without warning, the tower witch stabbed Takamiya. Strangely enough, even though it was in his body, he was unharmed. Even stranger, it hit Kagari's body. The tower witch laughed loudly and told Takamiya that his body was connected to Kagari's and any damage to one would affect the other. Kagari's body fell after the stab wound and Takamiya went to check on her. But the witch of the tower spoke to him and showed him a white-colored liquid and told him that if he drank it, his power would be unleashed and no one would be able to stop him. Takamiya wasn't sure what the tower witch was saying, but she approached him and gave him the liquid against his will. As soon as Takamiya drank the liquid, everything around him changed and he turned into an extremely powerful monster. But even so, he quickly went to check on Kagari. Kagari told him that she was fine and told him to close his eyes, and we saw that the witch of the tower was very happy that this had happened. Takamiya woke up at the school bus stop and found Kagari lying on the ground. He quickly took her to the school doctor, who reassured him that she had mild anemia and just needed to rest. But Takamiya was sad and kept telling himself that this was the second or third time Kagari had gotten hurt because of me. But Kagari soon became healthy and went to talk to Takamiya and told him that they should start practicing right away. Takamiya and Kagari went to the place where they were going to train. The first thing that stood out to him was the strange outfit that Kagari was wearing. Kagari decided to explain everything to him and told him that this outfit provides them with something very difficult: smooth flying. Kagari then asked Takamiya to try to fly, and when he did, he was amazed. Kagari Kagari then began to teach him more abilities so that he would be able to defend the cause of the Witch Business Bureau and be able to fight against the Tower Witches. Takamiya was so amazed by everything that was happening that he couldn't be sure if it was just a nightmare or the truth. He was amazed that after every battle against the Tower Witches, he would wake up as if he had been dreaming. But something strange happened this time. When he reached into his pocket, he found a ball with the same liquid that the Tower Witch had given him. Takamiya is almost certain that this is real and not a dream. In the end, and put it with his school supplies without anyone seeing it. In the days that followed, Kagari made sure to take Takamiya on flights to places far away from school so that he would get used to it. She also started teaching him all the weaknesses of the Tower Witches so that he could easily defeat them. One day, as Takamiya was preparing to return to school after a successful flight with Kagari, one of the Tower Witches suddenly crossed their path and said to Kagari, "Stop right there, you idiot. This is the end of you and your stupid student." Takamiya is annoyed, but Kagari tells him to calm down so she can deal with the situation. We then cut to two guards guarding the so-called Medusa. The two guards were very surprised at the attention and security, even though the Medusa was a frozen being in a liquid and the body of the Medusa was very carefully bound. So the two guards marveled at their presence and thought it was useless because the Medusa's body could never escape from that place. But one day, one of the guards felt that he saw the Medusa smiling. The other guard assured him that this was not possible at all. But soon the Medusa's body was able to free itself and escape from the place. We then saw a meeting of the Tower's witches and saw them talking about Kagari's great power. So they wanted to come up with a strong plan to get rid of her. Each of them talked about Kagari's strengths. Some thought her strength was fire, some thought her strength was her intellect and her quick reflexes. Suddenly, the Tower Witch who stabbed Takamiya on the bus walked in. She reassures them that she knows everything about Kagari and that they don't have to worry about anything. Takamiya was at home at the time, going about his normal life. We saw his little sister, Kasumi, trying to learn more about his life lately because she's noticed a lot of changes in him lately. So she was interested in knowing everything and kept asking him if he had a girl or a love interest in his life. Takamiya felt very shy and refused to tell her anything and dodged her questions. But his sister kept pestering him with words. She told him that a girl named Kagari had called him last week. Takamiya became even more nervous and told his sister that Kagari was just a classmate. Kagari was getting ready to face all the plans of the Tower Witches. Takamiya was still trying to escape the siege of his sister, who was determined that he and Kagari were having an affair. Takamiya was talking to his sister in an inaudible voice and telling her, "You don't know anything, you idiot. Kagari is a very powerful fire witch and I can't even think of a love affair between us." The next day, while Takamiya is on his way to the school bus, Kagari is surprised by an attack from the Tower Witches. But this time, Kagari reacted angrily and beat the Tower Witches to a pulp. However, she discovered that the Tower Witches' plan was different this time because they had learned that Kagari's power is always tied to Takamiya's. So their plan was to trap Takamiya and control his power, which would necessarily lead to Kagari's power and trap her. So the Tower Witches ambushed Takamiya and managed to trap him. And then they started talking to him and said, "You're trapped, you idiot, and we're going to force Kagari to come here to save you." Takamiya tried to hold on and escape, but it was very difficult to get away from the Tower's witches. Takamiya eventually manages to escape the clutches of the Tower Witches, with Kagari's help, of course. As soon as he got home, he found that his sister Kasumi had told their mother everything, and Takamiya was annoyed because he was embarrassed when anyone talked to him about it. He said to his sister, "What did you do, you idiot?" But his mom calmed him down and told him that Kasumi did the right thing because she was afraid for him. However, we realized that the real reason Kasumi did what she did was because she was extremely jealous of Kagari. Takamiya's mom started talking to him and his sister while Kagari was also present. The atmosphere was especially unpleasant due to Kasumi's jealousy and her repeated attempts to convince Kagari that Takamiya already had a girl in his life. Kagari was naturally annoyed, but she didn't try to show it because she didn't want anyone to know how much she loved Takamiya. After this difficult conversation, Takamiya packed his suitcase to move in with Kagari so as not to repeat what happened in the past and so that the witches of the tower could not catch him again. On the way, Takamiya apologized to Kagari for what his sister had done, but she told him that she wasn't upset and that she appreciated his sister's jealousy. Kagari then surprised Takamiya with a question that seemed strange to him. She asked him if he was happy to move in with her, and he replied that he was very happy and that he wouldn't miss this opportunity. This was the first time that Takamiya had made no secret of his admiration for Kagari. Takamiya went on to tell her that he always felt like there was an invisible bond between them, as if they had known each other forever. Kagari told him that she felt the same way and that she had vowed to protect him from any danger. The car that would take them to Kagari's house arrived, and on the way, Takamiya was amazed at the magnificence of Kagari's car. When they arrived at her house, Takamiya realized that he was in front of a huge edifice and that this was no ordinary house. They took the elevator and Takamiya was talking to himself and saying, "Oh my god, what are these strange things? We're going up to a very high place." Then he says to himself, "Hey, you idiot, Kagari mustn't be impressed, or I'll look stupid." Everything was fine, but once Kagari got to her room, she was surprised by the Medusa, who had managed to free herself. As soon as the Medusa saw Kagari, Kagari, it started attacking her. Kagari didn't fear for her life, but she feared for Takamiya and asked him to quickly go to the 12th floor. But Takamiya refused to do so and was determined to stay to defend her, especially after the Medusa had taken control of her and frozen her. That's when he remembered the liquid that one of the tower's witches had given him earlier. Even though he thought it might be a trap after all, he decided to take the risk and swallow the liquid while repeating that everyone chooses what they will be. At that time, the tower witches were waiting for the outcome of a battle that for them was a foregone conclusion. However, after Takamiya found his power, a huge energy burst out of them, causing a huge explosion in the place. When the witches of the tower realized what had happened, they were frightened. The explosion soon reached the place where they were sitting, even though it was far from the location of the battle between the Medusa and Kagari. Oddly enough, Takamiya noticed a witch who told him her name was the White Princess. When Takamiya asked her to help him unfreeze Kagari, the witch told him that this was not possible, unless he helped her with his power given the great bond between the two of them. Takamiya began to think about what to do, and the witch told him that he could help Kagari without anyone else. The witch soon disappeared after advising Takamiya not to get into trouble so that he could summon her in the future. Takamiya approached Kagari, and as soon as he did so, Kagari woke up and released all her restraints. But the Medusa quickly reappeared, and this time she wasn't alone, summoning the tower witches who had joined her. Kagari awoke to find the tower witches talking to her. They said, "Who do you think you are, you idiot? Your end is now at our hands." Kagari was furious and said, "I'll show you now who I am, you fools." Kagari then combined her power with Takamiya's, and they were able to achieve a crushing victory over the tower witches in record time. After the battle, Takamiya woke up in the school infirmary with Kagari by his side. When he asked her about the nightmare he had seen, Kagari assured him that it wasn't a nightmare at all, and that it was the truth. Takamiya felt that Kagari was playing a joke on him, and then Kagari unveiled a room in the infirmary. Takamiya saw the Medusa and the tower witches he and Kagari had defeated. Only then did Takamiya realize that everything that had happened was real. Kagari learned from the leadership of the Witch Business Bureau that she had been summoned to an emergency meeting. She tells Takamiya, and they decide to go to the meeting. But before that, Takamiya told Kagari that she needed to go live with him at his house because her home was no longer safe. Takamiya takes her to the house, and Kasumi is surprised to find Kagari there. But the biggest surprise is that Kagari will be living in the same house with her. Kagari lived in Takamiya's house, and there were always clashes between her and Kasumi, but Takamiya always intervened to calm things down. One day, Takamiya and Kagari went to school and realized that they were in front of Mr. Mikaji, the science teacher. As soon as they got to work, he was busy working on a new experiment and immediately started talking to her. He asked Takamiya about his relationship with Kagari and kept talking about how they were two of the most special students in the school. Takamiya tried to evade the question, but Mikaji told him, "I'm not stupid, and all the news comes to me on a daily basis." Then he went on to tell Takamiya, "I found out that you and Kagari were together last Sunday, and rumors about your relationship abound." Kagari tried to speak, but Mikaji surprised her with the liquid he was preparing for the experiment, which led directly to her disappearance. Takamiya found himself in the middle of nowhere with Mikaji, who immediately started talking to him. He told him that Kagari was protecting him, but not enough. He also told him that the liquid he had ingested would not unlock his power. Mikaji then proceeds to explain to Takamiya that the liquid breaks a number of seals, and that if all of them were broken, Kagari would not be able to protect him. He then offers to protect him instead of Kagari, but Takamiya doesn't take him up on the offer. While Mikaji was trying to convince him to accept, Kagari arrived on the scene and hit Mikaji, telling him, "Get away from Takamiya, you idiot. No one else is going to protect him." Although Takamiya doesn't know what's going on, he complies with Kagari's request, who tells him to move quickly in order to get back to school. Kagari went to talk on the radio, and everyone heard an announcement telling them to go to the gymnasium. At the gym, Kagari stood talking to everyone and told them that this was the first time she was talking to them. Then she blew a surprise and told everyone that she had assigned Takamiya to take over as the head of the order in her place. Everyone was surprised and very upset by the decision, but Kagari pulled out a piece of paper and told them that Takamiya had written it. It said, "Shut up, you stupid dogs. I'm the new student president, and any idiot who breaks the rules will be eliminated immediately." Takamiya felt he had to talk to the students, especially after his new position, and told them that he had not been nominated for the position, but that Kagari, who became his deputy, had relinquished it. The students calmed down a bit, and Takamiya started talking to them more, but Kasumi, as usual, decided to surprise everyone with one of her rash acts. So she attacked Takamiya and Kagari during the meeting. However, Kagari defended Takamiya with all her might and had to hug him and knock him down from a very high vantage vantage point. Despite Kasami's stupid behavior, Kagiri helped her when she felt she was in danger and refused to let her fall. Takamiya woke up to find Kagiri sitting next to him. As soon as he remembered what happened, he realized that it wasn't a nightmare but actually happened, so he apologized to Kagiri for everything. He then asked about Kasami, and Kagiri reassured him and told him that Kasami was fine but asleep. Kagiri starts talking to Takamiya about everything that happened and tells him that she doesn't want to strain his relationship with his sister any further. Takamiya is surprised and tells her that things are fine between him and Kasami, but Kagiri tells him that she's not an idiot to overlook the strained relationship they've had since she showed up in Takamiya's life. So Kagiri asked Takamiya to call her his little sister. So he tried to avoid calling her his little sister and told her that she was a bit older than him, but Kagiri asked him to call her his older sister and kept insisting. So Takamiya had to reluctantly comply, and he was annoyed. He wished that Kasami would disappear from the face of the earth so that she wouldn't continue to be a constant nuisance to him from time to time. He then looked sadly at the gift he had brought for Kasami to give to Kagiri to smooth things over between the two of them. But that was no longer possible after everything that had happened, so Takamiya dismissed it. Takamiya's mother called the house to check on her children, but no one answered the phone as they were all thinking about the next step. Takamiya thought all night until he fell asleep. After everything that had happened the day before, he had nightmares after nightmares. He saw his mother telling him and his sister that she had cheated on their father after marriage, that she had given birth to a sister by another man, and that she had left their sister with some relatives. But these relatives called her and asked her to come quickly to pick up her daughter. The mother then told Takamiya and Kasami to get ready to introduce their sister, and as soon as she opened the door, Kagiri entered. Much to Kasami's delight, but sad news for Takamiya. Once he woke up and realized it was just a dream, he was very happy. Takamiya came out of his room to check on the house and was surprised to find Kagiri, who quickly blended in and started doing household chores to help Takamiya's mother. Takamiya started talking to her and told her that calling her his sister was very difficult for him. Kagiri told him that he could call her by her name like before. Takamiya was overjoyed, but we noticed that the witches of the tower were watching. They became even more jealous when they saw Takamiya and Kagiri standing in the kitchen, talking to each other while washing dishes as if they were a couple. All the witches in the tower were annoyed and turned their attention to their leader, who had been trapped in the Medusa's body before. But she kept reassuring the witches that this would not last long and that Takamiya could betray Kagiri at any time. 6 hours later, the tower's witches were even more jealous because they saw that Kagiri and Takamiya's relationship was improving and there was no more friction between them. So much so that Kagiri sat next to Takamiya to soothe him into a deep sleep. After he woke up, Kagiri took him to school to start practicing mental exercises to raise his grades. But Takamiya, although he was overjoyed with Kagiri's treatment, asked her to take care of some magical training. But Kagiri told him that she was afraid for him. Takamiya thought to himself, "I know you're afraid of me, you idiot. But at this rate, I'll never achieve any magical ability no matter what I do. I don't like doing stupid mental exercises as much as I want to have magical power to destroy those who stand in my way." The tower witches were getting impatient, so their leader decided to attack Takamiya's house. And indeed, Takamiya at this time was stunned by everything that was happening and could not do anything about it. Even Kagiri herself couldn't get out of her bonds, especially since the witches of the tower had secured them with snake magic. So Kagiri spoke to their leader and said, "Okay, stupid, you've won this round, but the big battle isn't over yet." But Medusa kept laughing loudly and said, "It's all over. This is the big battle, you idiot." This time, Takamiya felt a different sensation than he had ever felt before because he and Kagiri had merged into one. That's why he felt every blow Kagiri received as if he was the one being hit. Takamiya lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he found himself in a sealed cell and asked Kagiri about this place. Kagiri told him that it's called the Punishment Dungeon and that it's where the loser of any battle against the Tower Witches is put. Takamiya tried to calm down in order to find a solution to this difficult situation. Kagiri approached him and managed to untie him, but the biggest issue was how to open the dungeon. Kagiri went on to tell Takamiya that he already had tremendous strength, but he had to keep the seals, because every time he tries to use his power without preparation, he could break the other seals, which would hurt them both. Kagiri then told Takamiya a dangerous secret. Her mother is one of the tower's most important witches. Takamiya felt it was getting complicated, but Kagiri assured him that she believed in the cause she was defending, that if the Tower Witches were to win, the entire city would be lost. Kagiri was determined to fight all the Tower Witches, including her mother. Kagiri was then able to use Takamiya's power properly, and they were able to get out of the dungeon. They then made their way to the school where the Tower Witches were based. There, Kagiri manages to execute a surprise attack on the Tower Witches, who quickly fend her off. In the period following these events, Kagiri started missing school, and all the teachers were amazed, because she was one of the smartest and brightest students, especially in math and physics classes. At this time, Kagiri was remembering everything that had happened and planning to overcome it and figure out how to defeat the Tower Witches. One day, some Tower Witches deliberately harassed Kagiri, but she punished them immediately and turned off their temperature, causing them to lose consciousness instantly. At this time, her friends noticed that she was always silent. One day, Kagari went to the boys' school to see something, but she didn't say what it was. After that, Kagari tried to make her life quieter and stay away from everything that bothered her. Strangely enough, Takamiya was no longer in her life, and Kagari rarely spoke, even to those closest to her. But we soon found out that this was just a dream, and we saw him waking up and telling Kagari about this dream, which he considered a nightmare and which took place while Kagari was in middle school. Over time, Kasumi tried to get used to Kagari's presence in the house, even though it was difficult for her. One day, Kasumi woke up to find Kagari and several of the office witches sitting together for breakfast. Kasumi was surprised, but Kagari showed no interest. After they finished eating, Kagari took Takamiya. He should not try to use his power again, because if he broke more seals, it would surely harm him. The Tower Witches then carried out a dangerous rebellion that destroyed large parts of the school. To Takamiya's surprise, Kagari spoke to him and told him that his new position required him to scrutinize everything that happened inside the school. Although Takamiya was stunned, he quickly shook it off and started thinking about his next move. After some time, some of the Tower's witches came to him and showed him a piece of paper that said he had to come to the sports arena in a little while for a fight. Takamiya was surprised at what he saw and began to think about what he should do. The strangest thing to her was that he didn't know why he was being challenged so suddenly. However, one of his classmates solved the mystery by telling him that she had been working as a part-time waitress the day before, and that she had seen two Tower Witches at her workplace who were meeting to come up with a plan to take down Takamiya. Takamiya's amazement was finally lifted when he realized that the student who had decided to challenge him was actually the student president before him. Takamiya realized what was going on and thought to himself, "Wow, you stupid idiot. All I needed was for you to show up and make your stupid offer." But Kagari told him a lot of information about that stupid student who offered to fight him and told him that her name was Rinnan. He also told him that she was very strong and had just defeated someone much stronger than her. But Takamiya decided to face her and decided that it would be cowardly and weak to back out of the fight. So he went to the sports arena where he had agreed to meet her. There he found her waiting for him, and she started talking to him sarcastically, and soon she started attacking him and beating him violently. Takamiya didn't realize what was happening and tried to defend himself, and then he remembered what Kagari had told him about Rinnan's weaknesses, and he also remembered that a strong blow to her face would end the fight. So he hit her with a very powerful blow that was precise and aimed at her face. Takamiya remembered the rest of Kagari's instructions and knew he was supposed to follow up with more and more strikes, but he suddenly felt like he didn't want to. Before he could make a decision, he was surprised by the arrival of Kagari and a number of Tower Witches who attacked Rinnan with great force and beat her for a long time. We learned that they had managed to pull off a very clever trick. They were dressed in a costume that made them invisible to the crowd, so the crowd thought that Takamiya was in complete control of the situation. The fight ended with Takamiya winning, of course, and then everyone headed to the school, where they learned that Mikaji had been injured after the Tower Witches attacked. However, things quickly improved after this battle, and all was well at school. Kagari then resumed her conversation with Takamiya and told him that he needs to work on his combat skills, because there could be a lot of battles between him and the witches of the tower in the future. When Takamiya told her that his level had improved enough, she told him that it wasn't enough to win battles easily. She reminded him that in the last battle, he wouldn't have won without the intervention of her and the other witches in the office. Takamiya was convinced by the conversation he had with Kagari and went with her to the training ground. There, Kagari told him that he had to concentrate on all the instructions she was going to give him. The training actually started, and it was very difficult, especially at first, because Kagari told Takamiya to focus on his strengths in order to summon them and be able to produce his own fire energy that would enable him to win any battle. But Takamiya had a very difficult time with this, and at the beginning of the training, he couldn't do anything. So Kagari decided to put him through his paces and pushed him from a high place. She then rushed after him and kept reminding him to summon whatever powerful thing was inside the building all the way from the top to the bottom. It was awkward afterward because when Takamiya focused too much on summoning what was inside him, a large statue of Kagari, who she knew he thought about all the time, appeared. Takamiya tried to deny it, but to no avail. We then learned that Takamiya inadvertently broke a second seal while fighting against Rinnan, which alarmed everyone, because if he continues to break his seals, he's sure to be severely damaged in the end. Takamiya spoke to Kagari and asked her why she was suddenly interested in training him, and Kagari told him that she had seen tremendous energy in him during his fight against Rinnan. Naturally, Rinnan was very upset about what happened in the last battle against Takamiya, so she met with the Tower Witches and told them that this was not the last battle and that she would soon restore the right of the Tower Witches in a decisive battle. Kagari spoke to Takamiya and told him that the date for the final exams had already been set and that they will be held next week. She also told him that exams are more important right now than training, so she has lightened the training load a bit until the exams are over. But the Tower Witches on the other side were trying to find a weapon that would change the fate of the battle, and one of them had access to a dangerous type of bomb. However, these bombs were not so much destructive as they were magical bombs that would be able to penetrate the defense wall put up by the witches of the office to protect the people of the city. One day, while Kagari and Takamiya were taking their final exams, a large magical explosion went off in the city. Takamiya was alarmed and got up to go outside and find out what was going on, but Kaguri told him not to move and to concentrate on the exam. But after some time, Kaguri felt that the situation was getting out of control. She told Takamiya to move quickly, and Kaguri was able to get down through a secret tunnel that she knew was there. Takamiya was amazed that the tunnel existed, especially since he hadn't noticed it before, but Kaguri told him to hurry up and find out what was going on. They arrived at the scene of the explosion and realized that Renan was responsible for everything that had happened, but more importantly, Renan and her followers were ambushed and managed to capture many of Takamiya's followers. They soon captured Kaguri and Takamiya as well, and Takamiya was amazed at what was happening because he had always believed that Kaguri couldn't be captured. In the dungeon, Takamiya sat talking to himself and said, "Wow, but you idiots, locking me in this place with Kaguri will necessarily increase the power of the Tower Witches, who will soon be able to impose their magic on the entire city." Takamiya then tried to use some of his magic to get out of his cell, but it didn't work. That's when Kaguri spoke to him and told him that he wouldn't be able to use his magic as long as he was locked up in this place. Kaguri's mother was aware of all this, and despite her disagreement with her daughter, tried to get her out of her cell, but was unable to do so. Kaguri spoke to Takamiya and told him that they should trust her mother because, despite her different affiliation, she couldn't possibly mean them any harm. Only then do they decide to look for an escape route in order to organize the Office Witches and start attacking the Tower Witches and regain control of the city. Takamiya and Kaguri actually got out of their prison and walked for so long that Takamiya felt like he had been walking for days, but Kaguri urged him to hold on and told him that this was the only way to get out of the place where they were locked up. After a long walk, they reached the city, where Takamiya was surprised by the state of the city, which was very bad. Takamiya felt guilty and kept talking to Kaguri and said, "I'm sure it's all my fault." Then he kept talking and wondering and kept asking Kaguri why the witches of the tower were always after him. But Kaguri told him that there was no time for questions and that they had to hurry to organize and make a solid plan to regain control of the city after defeating the Tower Witches. When Kaguri sensed that Takamiya was beginning to lose his desire to fight the Tower Witches, she reminded him of all that had happened in the past. She also reminded him that he had a lot of determination that would be the only way to win. Despite the difficult situation and despite the severe damage done to the city by the Tower Witches' attack, Takamiya decided to summon his courage and continue the battle. However, the Tower Witches were so far ahead of the Office Witches that they started booby-trapping some of the Office Witches with more magic bombs. Meanwhile, Takamiya and Kaguri were on their way out of the secret tunnel, but the Tower Witches soon realized they were there and sent one of their own to attack them. But Kaguri started to defend herself and Takamiya and tried to fight back. She kept telling them, "All I needed was for you idiots to show up, but I promised to defeat you here and then wipe out your entire organization." Meanwhile, the Office Witches were working on a way to be able to disarm the bombs planted by the Tower Witches. After some time, one of the Bureau's witches was able to come up with a genius way to dismantle the bombs without any danger. But it required special skill, and any mistake in defusing the bombs could lead to a catastrophe for the entire city. Kaguri told Takamiya that there was an old contract between the Tower Witches and the Bureau Witches, so she has to get to the center of the city where the contract is located and then start negotiations with the Tower Witches to find a solution to everything that is happening in the city. After a long walk, Kaguri and Takamiya arrive at that place where she meets the Tower Witches and starts talking to them. Takamiya found the situation to be extremely dangerous, especially since the Office Witches had connected all the bombs to a single timer, and their plan was to disarm the bombs in an instant. As good as the plan was, it was extremely dangerous because failure could only mean one thing: severe damage to all the witches in the office. However, the plan worked well, and the Office Witches were able to save all the witches that the Tower Witches had managed to attach to the bombs. Takamiya fell asleep and woke up with Kaguri by his side, where she comforted him and told him that everything would be fine and that he shouldn't worry. The Office Witches then discovered that one of them had disappeared, and the Tower Witches had already caught her and locked her up in a dungeon. But we discovered that the Office Witch had let the Tower Witches catch her of her own free will. Then she gathered as many Tower Witches as she could around her and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Now I'm going to finish you all off, you idiots." As soon as the Office Witch took off her sweater, we saw a ticking time bomb about to explode. The bomb soon exploded, severely damaging the Tower Witches' quarters, who were unable to do anything about the explosion. When they tried to regroup again to attack the Office Witches were able to execute another attack that killed all the Tower Witches' attempts. At the time, Takamiya was overjoyed at how powerful the Office Witches had become. He kept talking about the Tower Witches and said, "Wow, but you idiots, did you think you could defeat us so easily? It's never going to happen." As for Kaguri, she begins to prepare for a final attack that will eliminate any future attempts by the Tower Witches. Kaguri then tried to reach out to her mother to put aside their differences and come up with a joint plan to defeat the Tower Witches. Takamiya was surprised to find Kaguri talking to her mother and asking her to put Takamiya in the same class as her. Oddly enough, she was talking to her as if she was the school's headmistress. Takamiya felt that what he was seeing saying was not happening in the real world, and was indeed surprised when Mikage arrived shortly afterward and informed him that everything he had seen was happening in a parallel universe. This of course caused Takamiya to be even more stunned, but Mikage tried to control his surprise and told him that he saw him lost in the memory lane and decided to intervene so that he could alert him to what was going on. Mikage then went on to tell Takamiya that there was no way to end it all except to be hit by a different magical wave. When Takamiya asks him what kind of magic he should be exposed to, Mikage replies that it's a magic called memory erasure. Oddly enough, we noticed that all of this was happening to Takamiya while he was sleeping in front of Kagiri, who was noticing all the changes happening to him, especially after the acceleration of recent events, which led to an increase in his heartbeat during sleep. In the city, the battles between the witches of the tower and the witches of the office continued. In some of these battles, the outcome was decided in favor of the office witches, but in other battles, the tower witches decided the battle from the beginning. As for Kagiri, she was very worried about Takamiya, as his health had begun to deteriorate after all the changes he had undergone recently. Kagiri was very confused because she didn't know the best way for Takamiya to regain his health. However, Kagiri's mother spoke to her and told her that everything would become clear in the near future and that she should prepare for a potentially decisive battle against the tower witches. Kagiri reassured her mother that she only had that battle on her mind and told her, "I will eliminate those idiots as soon as the battle begins. That's my goal." In the following period, the office witches managed to win several victories over the tower witches, which angered Medusa, who decided to intervene herself in order to take control of the situation. Medusa arrives at the stronghold of the Bureau witches and starts talking to them and says, "So you idiots are the ones who beat my girls," and then she arrests a large number of them. Kagiri learns what happened and decides to move quickly to respond to Medusa's attack, but before she does, she's worried about Takamiya's unconsciousness. At the time, Takamiya was still sitting in a parallel world with Mikage, who told him that he had already been subjected to memory erasure magic in the past. So what he's seen right now is just a replay of what happened before, but this replay is happening because the memory erasing magic has worn off. We jumped back to the present and saw Kagiri's overwhelming attack on Rinan's stronghold so that she could defeat her and then reach Medusa. However, the battle between Kagiri and Rinan was extremely intense due to the magical power that each of them possessed. However, Kagiri was able to dominate most of the battle to the point where she was able to completely control Rinan's magical power. But Rinan quickly regained her power and managed to severely injure Kagiri. Kagiri spoke to her and said, "You think the battle is over, you idiot? It's just the beginning." Rinan lost her patience and used her most powerful spells and actually managed to knock Kagiri away, but Kagiri regained her strength and started attacking Rinan again. Rinan was amazed that the powerful spell she cast on Kagiri was supposed to kill her or at least immobilize her. Kagiri taunted her, telling her that she had recently combined her magical ability with Takamiya's, doubling her power. In the parallel world, Mikage was still completing his tale for Takamiya, and as soon as he finished it, Takamiya woke up in the real world and found himself unconscious for a long time. But the witches in the office reassured him that everything was normal and that there was nothing to worry about. When he asked about Kagiri, they told him that she had gone to battle against Rinan to find Medusa, so he followed her and asked her why she had combined his power with hers. Kagiri told him that she had no other choice. Although Kagiri thought she had finished the battle, Rinan informed her that the tower witches had managed to plant the largest magical bomb in the city's history. The disaster was that the place where the bomb was planted was vital to the citizens, but Rinan told her that she was too late because Rinan had already pressed the button to trigger the bomb. The bomb soon explodes and Kagiri realizes that it is not one bomb, but several bombs that were connected to each other in an intricate way that enables them to explode at the same time. After Takamiya arrived at the scene, Rinan said, "Thank you, asshole, for coming so quickly. All those bombs wouldn't have exploded without you." Takamiya felt so much guilt that he decided to make one last attempt to stop the bombs from exploding, but it wasn't possible. He decided that he would do whatever it took to make the city whole again, even if it meant his life. So he cast a powerful spell, summoning all the power he and Kagiri had in common. And only then was the city restored to its former glory, better than it was before the Tower Witch bombs exploded. Takamiya decided that he would pay with his life for what he had done, and he was perfectly content with that. He approached Kagiri and told her that he was completely satisfied with what he had done, and that if he could do it all over again, he would do it without hesitation. Kagiri suddenly lunges at Rinan and tells her that she won't let Takamiya die and offers to take her own life in exchange for Takamiya's, who refuses. But before he could control the situation, Rinan took Kagiri's soul, much to Takamiya's dismay. He rushed towards her to punish her for what she had done and took his dagger and threatened to kill her. But his strength soon waned, of course, because his strength was essentially tied to the strength of Kagiri, who had just passed out and he didn't even know if she was alive or dead. Mikage then made a connection from the parallel world to the real world and told Takamiya that he needed to hurry up and treat Kagiri, because if he didn't, there would be a lot of trouble in the future. Takamiya was very saddened by what had happened to Kagiri and didn't know what to do, so he kept taking his anger out on the witches of the tower and saying, "Damn, but you idiots, you're the ones who caused all of this. You're the ones who've been harassing me from the beginning, but now I'm promising you the ultimate revenge, especially after what happened to Kagiri. As much as Takamiya thought about what he should do to save Kagiri, he couldn't come up with a solution, so he decided to take advantage of his closest contact with Mikaji from the parallel universe and asked him what he should do to save her. Mikaji asks him about her symptoms, and Takamiya freaks out because he realizes that Kagiri could be dead, so he kept assuring Mikaji that she was alive. She was just exerting too much energy. Mikaji calmed him down and told him the steps he needed to take to wake her up. The first step was to draw many circles around Kagiri's body after somehow placing her body on the ground. Mikaji then asked Takamiya to kiss Kagiri until she regained consciousness, but Takamiya felt very shy and hesitated for a long time. But soon Kagiri regained consciousness and was in good health. Naturally, the news of Kagiri's return was very bad news for the Tower Witches. But strangely enough, Takamiya, as usual, woke up feeling like he was dreaming and confused reality with fantasy, especially since all the important events he often sees them while he is asleep. As soon as he woke up, he quickly started looking for Kagiri and was relieved when he saw her in front of him and made sure she was okay. As for Kagiri's mother, the witches of the tower found out that she was helping her daughter, so they were very angry with her. But when one of them tried to attack her, Kagiri's mother gave her a harsh lesson and told her, "Don't cross the line, you idiot. I have the power to blow up all the witches in the tower." Afterward, Takamiya and Kagiri had a quiet conversation as they walked through the streets of the city and reminisced about everything that had happened in the past. Takamiya said, "It's been like a dream, and I couldn't have done it without you." Kagiri praised him and said, "You were able to save the city because you are brave and have the spirit of a warrior in you." Suddenly, a group of tower witches appeared and wanted to stop Kagiri and hurt her. When she tried to attack them, Takamiya reminded her that she didn't have enough energy for a fight. But Kagiri told him it was too little to need her energy. She attacks them and manages to defeat them with ease. After the battle, Kagiri headed back to Takamiya's house for a few days of peace and quiet. On the other hand, the witches of the tower didn't know what to do after what Kagiri had done to them.